Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in November. Alright guys, so November I read 11 books, and I'm gonna say I completely failed at keeping to my TBR, so I feel like the last few months I've done a really good job of sticking with the books I say I'm gonna read, and that didn't happen in November. I just turned into a complete mood reader, and I read a lot of romance, a lot of indie published books as well. So most of these books are indie romance, fantasy romance, there's I believe a YA fantasy, and it's just a very eclectic mix of genres. So for the most part, I really enjoyed most of the books. I did have one DNF this month. So if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Thursday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. And if you haven't yet, please hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram. It is linked down in the description below. With all of that out of the way, let's talk about all of the books I read in November. Alright, so we're going to start off with the biggest surprise of November. So I talked about in my November TBR that I wanted to start the series Flock by Kate Stewart. Little did I know, I was going to become completely obsessed with this series and read the entire series in a week. So this is following Cecilia, who moves to this new town in order to get her inheritance from her estranged father. So she moves to this new town, doesn't know anybody, and she ends up meeting a guy named Sean, and they hit it off right away, and he kind of takes her under his wing, and she becomes immersed in his world. So that is a very bland summary of what this book is about, and if you read the backs of these books, they do not help you at all. And like I said in another video, I think that's purposeful, just because you don't know what you're getting into. And oh my goodness, this series made me ugly cry. Like, I loved this series. I did a whole review of this series. I'll leave that linked in the cards in the description. It was just so good. It had everything I wanted. It has a love triangle. It has a slow burn romance. It has action. This is definitely more of like a thriller romance, but it's so good. I highly recommend, if you've been following my channel for a while and you know that we have similar reading tastes, I loved this. So I cannot recommend enough picking this series up. It's so good. The next two books on this list are actually a reread. So the 7th book in the Zodiac Academy, Heartless Guy, is going to come out in late or mid-December. So I did a reread of books 4 and 5, and I'm going to do a reread of book 6. So I read The Shadow Princess, which, oh my goodness, the ending of this, it hurts just as much the second time around, even though I know what's going to happen. So maybe it didn't hurt quite as much, but it still hurt. It hurt. So really enjoyed this reread, and then I also did a reread of Cursed Fates, also amazing, highly enjoyed it, or very much enjoyed it. So I will be rereading the 6th book, and then I'll start Heartless Guy, which I just cannot wait for. But as always, I love this series, so I enjoyed my reread just as much as the first time I read it, and I have a full video talking about the Zodiac Academy that I'll leave in the cards and the description, but highly recommend the entire series. It's a bully romance. It's been described as like spicy Harry Potter. I don't think that's really accurate, and I just have to say, I've recommended this series a lot, and a lot of people will comment after they read the first book, and they say they don't really enjoy it. The first book, in my opinion, is by far the worst in the series. I think it does a pretty good job setting up the world, but it really, give it till book 2 before you pass judgment. I feel like book 1 wasn't written very well, and it's just a little cringy at times, but the rest of the books just get better and better. Please read the series. It's so, so good. Next up, I read 3 holiday romances, and honestly, I enjoyed all of them. I will say if I had to pick a favorite, it's probably The Holiday Swap by Maggi Knox. So this is following Charlie and Cass, and they are both identical twins. So Charlie works for a show that's similar to like the Great British Bake Off, and she has this co-host that she's competing against, and the co-host is a complete jerk and tries to like sabotage her, and then one day Charlie ends up getting a concussion and can't taste or smell, and she starts to panic. So she contacts Cass, who is working at the family bakery, and asks if they can swap places. So it goes from there. Obviously, they both form or have love interests that think they're the other sister, and I was kind of afraid it was going to feel a little like catfishing. It didn't. I think it was handled pretty well. I really enjoyed it. I think the ending is a little out there, but overall, it was a very fun time, and I highly recommend picking this up around Christmas time. It's just a very cute, almost like a Hallmark movie rom-com. And next up, I read The Matzah Ball, and this is by Jean Meltzer. So this is following Rachel, who is the daughter of a very prominent rabbi, and she's actually battling this chronic illness known as CFS, which I knew nothing about, and I think the author did a really good job of explaining the disease. It was just, you really felt for Rachel and how tough her life is because of CFS. But anyway, she is Jewish, and her big secret to her family is she loves writing Christmas romances. And like I said, her father is a prominent rabbi, so she's very afraid her family won't approve. And she just loves Christmas. Christmas is her happy place, and she loves writing about it. Unfortunately, her editor, or whoever is in charge of her in the writing industry, ends up telling her that she needs to do a Hanukkah romance. They don't want another Christmas romance from her this year. And she really doesn't want to do that until she finds out that there is a Matzah Ball coming to town, which is where Jewish singles can get together and mingle. Unfortunately, all the tickets are sold out, and the Matzah Ball is actually being thrown by her old ex-boyfriend from a Jewish summer camp, or JCC, and she absolutely hates him. But she is going to suck it up and try to get a ticket to this Matzah Ball, and it's just a really fun time. I was laughing out loud a lot throughout this book, and I highly recommend reading it. And the last holiday romance I read was Nick and Noel's Christmas Playlist by Codi Hall. So this is very similar to Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. It's following Noel and Nick, who Noel, when she was younger, her parents actually died around Christmas, so she kind of resents Christmas, and she ended up moving in with Nick's family, and they're just the nicest people, and both Nick and Noel end up deploying into the military, and then Noel comes back, and then Nick stays in the military a little bit longer. So we fast forward a little bit, and Nick has now traveled back to his home to see Noel and his girlfriend that he's been dating for 8 years, who ends up breaking up with him right before Christmas. Now, Noel and Nick, although they're friends, they start to have feelings for each other, but they don't really know how that's going to impact their friendship and their families, and it goes from there. This was very fun. It was very cute. I think the writing wasn't quite my favorite, but overall it was still a very fun time. I do think this is very long for a Christmas romance, or I don't know. It just felt like it could have been a little bit shorter. We could have cut out some parts and it would have been just as good. But overall, I very much enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it for the holiday season. All right, and next up I read Don't Kiss the Bride, a Marriage of Convenience romance by Carian. So this book is an age gap romance, and it was a lot more emotional than I thought it was going to be. So I recently read Birthday Girl. I loved it. I'm actually doing a video that'll come out after this video, which is just about age gap romances and my two favorites. This is one of them. I very much enjoyed this. It's following Skylar and Lucky, and Skylar is a girl who's living with she's living with her single mother who is very neglectful and isn't taking care of her. She has she's a hoarder, essentially, and Skylar's pretty much been taking care of herself. Now, Skylar herself has an eating disorder and some other emotional things and some health issues, and she can't afford to take care of herself. So she meets Lucky, who is this construction worker who's just a good guy, and he ends up offering to marry Skylar in order to get her on his insurance. And it goes from there, and some of the issues handled in this book, I just feel like were done very, very well. Like I said, there's a lot of talks of an eating disorder, and just Skylar dealing with the fact that both of her parents are completely neglectful and just don't care about her. So I really enjoyed this. This is probably one of my favorite age gap romances, and I highly recommend picking it up. I will say it is a taboo romance. I think he's in his late 30s and she is 19 or 18. I think she's 18 turning 19. So it is taboo. There is spice, obviously, and I really enjoyed it. So I highly recommend just check the trigger warnings before jumping into it. All right, so this next book is gonna be hard for me to review because I feel like I have a lot of negatives, but overall, I did really end up enjoying it. So The Love Hypothesis by Hazelwood. So this is very popular. I am very late to the game on reading this. It is very little fanfic. It is following Olive, who is a girl in STEM, who ends up fake dating a professor, and they end up, as the story progresses, obviously, Olive develops feelings for her professor, and then we find out his backstory. And it was really fun. However, Olive as a character was so frustrating. She kept making such terrible decisions where you just want to jump into the book and be like, why are you doing this? No one would make these decisions. And I don't know, I was just very frustrated with Olive. And the writing, I enjoyed somewhat. However, I get that it's very low fanfic. We get that the main love interest is tall. I think they bring up the fact that he is tall, has broad shoulders, and is huge many, many times. And there is a spice scene in this that I enjoyed, but also I was kind of laughing at some of the sayings. Overall, though, I did really enjoy this, especially the end. There is a altercation between two characters that I was like, oh my God, which is probably why I stayed up till 2 a.m. finishing this, because I think the end of this book really shines. I just didn't love the beginning very much, and Olive as a character, I just wasn't a huge fan of, which I'm not sure if that's a controversial opinion. I know a lot of people that I follow, Jess from Peaceful Books and a few other people have really, really enjoyed this. I did enjoy this, and I have been thinking about this a lot since I finished it, and I kind of, I don't know. And I love the relationship. I love Olive and, I forget the main character, Adam Driver. Olive and Adam, I love their relationship, and I love them together, just separately. I wasn't a huge fan of them. Like, I didn't really know enough about Adam. He was just very brooding and very quiet and really only gave like a half smile every time he saw Olive, and then Olive was just overly ridiculous, I feel like. But overall, like I said, I have a lot of negatives, but I did really enjoy this, and I think this is very much worth picking up. I haven't read a book that involves girls in STEM before, and I really did enjoy that aspect. So I recommend picking this up, although I do see a couple issues with this novel. All right, so the last book is the book I ended up DNFing. And honestly, I might go back and try to read this. I think at the time I just wasn't feeling it. It's very slow paced, and it's a little bit more gory than I was anticipating. So this is The Wolf and the Woodsman by Reid, and it's following a girl who lives in this pagan society, and her mother was a seer, which is a woman with white hair who has these powers to see into the future. And they are very worried or leery of the Wolfmen, who are these men who come and take these seer women away from their villages, and they're never seen again. So, like I said, the main character's mother was killed, and she is not a seer. She is just a regular girl, but she's living in this village, and she really has no ties to anyone in this village. So when the Wolfmen come, the village elder, who actually I believe is the seer, ends up giving our main character to the Wolfmen in exchange, so that way no other real seers are actually taken. So feel very bad for the main character in this novel. And then we find out that the leader of the Wolfmen isn't actually who he said he was or appears to be, and it, I assume, goes from there. I only got about 2 chapters after that, the big reveal of who the Wolfman is, and that's when I stopped. So I will say, very gory. There's a lot of body amputation, self-harm, where people will remove body parts in order to become more powerful, and it is done in great detail, so just be leery of that. And overall, I just think, yeah, I just wasn't in the mood for it. It is very slow-paced, like I said, and it's a lot about different people telling stories and how these different cultures actually all have very similar stories, just with like slight differences. And I think it will be interesting. And I think it's a book that I will want to read probably when it gets a little bit more around winter. I really enjoy reading like dark wood setting novels, or novels that are set in like the dark wood, and more intense fairy tale type books in winter. So I might pick it back up. But overall, I ended up DNFing it, and I would recommend it if you're someone that really likes fairy tales and just finding out the origin of fairy tales, but for me, it just didn't work. All right, guys, those are all the books I read in November. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments below, have you read any of these books? Which is your favorite? Which one didn't you like? And I will also be posting my December TBR a little bit later this week. I know my scheduling is a little off, so I'm posting it a little bit late, but it is coming. And I said this already, but I post new videos every Thursday and Sunday. And if you haven't, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye.